We begin today at the Mishnah on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Motza Shtare Chayv. A person finds documents of a loan. What does he do? Does he return it to the lender or not? Im Yeshbe Machrayis Nechasim. If in the Shtar it's written that the lender can collect even from the properties of the borrower. That's what the concept of Achrayis Nechasim means. The Gemara is going to keep on repeating this term, so remember that. Achrayis Nechasim again is that the Shtar is written in it that you can collect from the properties of the borrower. Then lo yachzer. You shouldn't return the shtar to the lender because we're afraid it's going to be used in a way that it's not supposed to be, and the Gemara will explain why we're concerned about this. Shebezdin nefroim. This is a kind of shtar that Bezdin would use to collect from it, and we can't return it. However, if this shtar does not have in it written that you could collect with it from the properties of the borrower, yachzer, then you can return it. Shein Bezdin nefroim, Bezdin will not use it to collect with it, so there's no problem to return it. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. Chachamim disagree to this distinction. Chachamim say benkach or benkach, either way, whatever kind of shtar it is, it's written in it, achrayis nechasim, it's not. Lo yachzer, you find this shtar chayv, do not return it, because Bezdin will use it to collect with it, and therefore there's a problem to use the shtar once it fell and it was found. The Gemara will explain all the details of the Mishnah. Let's see. So the Gemara starts with Rab Meir's opinion that made a distinction whether the shtar has in it achrayis nechasim or not. Frag the Gemara, b'mai askinon. What are we talking about over here with the shtar? If the case over here is that the borrower is agreeing, he says, yes, I admit, I borrowed the money and I still owe the money, it's not paid, so then what's the problem? Why shouldn't you return the shtar to the lender? If the shtar, if it's written in it that you can use the shtar to collect from his properties, and even when those properties are sold to someone else, why shouldn't you return it to the lender? He's admitting that he still owes the money. If the case here is that the loive is standing and screaming that don't return the shtar, it's not a true shtar, or I paid the shtar, he doesn't agree to this. So in a case where the shtar does not have in it the written that you can collect from the properties or his properties, even when they're sold off, why should you return it? It's true, it's a shtar that you cannot collect with it from the properties that are mishubadim, meaning even if they're sold to someone else, but you can still use this document to collect from the properties that are free and clear. In other words, the properties that are still in the borrower's possession, and the borrower here is standing and saying that don't return the shtar because I already paid it, or I never borrowed the money. So why are we returning the shtar? Answers the Gemara, there's going to be a few pshatim here in this Mishnah, just to understand what's going on here in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say three different pshatim in this Mishnah. So the Gemara starts with one pshat. The pshat over here in this Mishnah is Keshachayiv Maida. The loive here is standing and he admits that he still owes the money. So then why should you not return it in a case when there's achrayis nechasim in the shtar? The reason over here why we don't return the shtar in a case where you have now the ability to use this shtar to go collect from properties that the loiva owned and he already sold off to someone else. The reason is the chashinon, we're concerned, shema kasav lulvois benissen. Maybe the date of the shtar was written with the intention to borrow the money in Nissen. But then v'loy lava tishrei. You didn't end up borrowing the money until Tishrei. So the actual, the loan, the shibud of the karkois only began when you borrowed the money, which is in Tishrei. And now if you return this shtar, you're going to come and collect from the buyers of this loivis properties, shaloi kedin, not according to what's coming to you, because he bought it before you borrowed the money, before there was any shibud. And you're going to return this shtar, and you're going to come and collect shaloi kedin. This shtar, one second. The Gemara is going to explain everything. Everything's coming here. This shtar is what's called also a shtar mukdim. When you have a shtar that's written with, you borrowed the money, as it says here. In the end, you ended up borrowing the money in Tishrei time. But the date is written in the shtar earlier, Nisan. So you're giving yourself an option to collect from properties that shouldn't be, there should be no lien on these properties for this loan. So it's a shtar mukdim, such a kind of shtar as possible. So therefore, this kind of shtar, we don't want to return in order for it not to be used shaloi kedin. But the Gemara now asks right away the obvious question: if so, kol shtori dasel kaman. Any document that comes in front of us to Bezdin with a date in it, nechesh lo hachi. We should also be concerned. How do we trust the date? Maybe it was written in Nisan and the money wasn't borrowed until Tishrei. How are you using this document to go now and collect from properties that were sold before the money was borrowed? We don't know. So the Gemara says, no, by a regular star, we don't have such a concern. Kol shtari loy rei. All other shtaris, there's nothing bad, there's nothing that's not right with it. We see a shtar, comes into Bezdin with witnesses that signed it, with a date, we trust it. And you collect it from what the date in the shtar is. Hani, over here, our Mishnah is talking about a shtar rei. There's a reiseh. There's something that's bad with it. What's bad with it? The fact that the shtar was lost. It fell out of the malva's possession. A document, a valuable document that a person has, you don't just lose. You usually put it away in a safe place. Why is he losing such an important document like this? So here, because of that, that's the basis of our concern that there's something that's not right with this document. And what's not right about it? The fact that the date in it is not accurate, and therefore it's a pashtal shtar, and therefore the malva lost it, because he knows that this shtar is really useless. You can't collect with it properly at all. So it's really a pashtal shtar, and that's why he ended up losing it. That's the basis over here of why in a case where it has the date in it, and you can end up using it to collect from the chasam mishubadim, we don't give back the shtar. Huh? Why?
Doesn't take away from the fact that maybe it was.
There's a concern though. There's a chashash. We don't know. There's a chashash, so we can't return it.
But every star could like that.
Now every star, since it's safe and it's the malva's presenting the star, he never lost it, so we trust it. It's a good star. If you lose an important document like this, so we start thinking, why are you losing such an important document? So it must be that there's something off over here. The Gemara brings, but how about this Mishnah that says, Bava Basra, Kaisvin shtar leloive. You're allowed to write a star for a borrower. You write a star for, even if the loive says, write a star that I borrowed $1,000 from someone. The malva, the lender is not even there. He's not actually borrowing the money now. So he's obligating himself now, and he's going to use the star at a later point. When he's going to borrow the money, he's going to have the star ready to be able to use it for this loan. But the question is, how are we going and writing such a star now before he actually borrowed the money? According to what you said, the moment you put a date on the star, there's a big problem. So we should be concerned. So he's writing the star before he actually borrows the money. So he writes the star in Nisan time. He doesn't end up borrowing the money until a later point, until Tishrei time. And then later on, when it comes, the malva to collect the loan, he's going to end up collecting even from properties that were sold off before you borrow the money, and really there's no lien on them for this loan, and you're gonna collect Shaloi Kedin. So Ravasi answers that Mishnah that says you can write the star for the loiva even when the malva is not there. B'shtarei hakna. It's speaking about a star where the loiva is not just writing a star for a loan that he might decide to use in the future. It's a star where the loiva, I guess the loiva wants to convince the malva that he could trust him to pay back. So the loiva writes right now, $1,000 I borrow from you, and then he writes into the star, I'm mishabed myself, I'm makne, I'm going to pay back this money whether I borrow it from you, whether I don't borrow it from you. That's a shtar akno. He makes a kinyan right now that the hashibed nafshe, he's mishabed himself immediately, even before he borrows the money, that I owe it to you, even if I didn't borrow the money. So the money that he owes begins from that date that you wrote, even if he didn't borrow the money yet. So the later, if the malva collects from properties from that date, it's okay. That's when the shibud, when the lien begins. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute. If that's the case, so we see over here that when you have a star, there's a kind of star where you owe the money just based on the actual money that you borrowed. But then there's another kind of star called a star hakna, where you actually will mishabed yourself to pay even before you actually borrowed the money. See, masnis and diktani in our Mishnah where it says, if this is a star that you could collect from the properties of that are sold off, lo yachsid, don't return them. Now we explain that's even if the loiva admits that he still owes the money, and why shouldn't you return it? We're concerned that maybe the date of the star was written in Nisan time, and you didn't borrow until Tishrei time. And therefore, if you return this to the malva, he may collect from sold off properties. That was our concern. But now the Gemara asks, Amai lo yachzer. Why shouldn't you return the star to the malva? Nechzi, let's take a look in the star itself. If in the shtar it's written that the loive obligated himself immediately to pay on the date that it was written, regardless of when the money was actually borrowed, so he was mishabed himself right away. So there's no concern that the date is off, that you're going to collect from before that date, before the time that the money was borrowed. And if this is a shtar where you see it doesn't say any akna on it, so then lekele mechash. So then there's nothing to be concerned about. The ha-omrit, because we said that kileke malve bahadei, if the malve is not there with you, loikasvina, we don't write a shtar. And Rashi explains what this means, kileke malve bahadei. In the beginning of it, Rashi explained that the Edom only sign a shtar when they see that the malve is there and they see that the malve already lent the money. Otherwise, they're not going to sign the shtar. So there's no concern that it was written with a previous date and it was only borrowed later. You don't sign the shtar unless they see that the money was actually borrowed already. So what's the basis of this concern over here? So Ravasi explains the pshat in our Mishnah, and over here, no, we go back to the previous point. Once a shtar fell out of someone's possession, there's something that's not right here. And even though usually we wouldn't be concerned about this, as the Gemara just explained, Miman of Shach, we know that the date of the shtar is trustworthy, but over here, once the shtar fell, there's a problem. Afagav, the shtori, the lav akno. Usually a shtar that it's not written in it, that the loiva obligated himself to pay right away. If the malva is not there with you, and the malva didn't lend you the money now, we're not going to write the shtar, the Edom are not going to sign the shtar. But Masnisim, in our Mishnah, Kivin the Nofal, since the shtar fell out of the Malva's possession, so over here we say Israele. There's a reyes, there's something that's not right with the shtar. Over here we are concerned that maybe an exception happened and the shtar was written and there was no hakna. The loiva did not obligate himself to pay right away, and he didn't borrow the money yet. He borrowed the money 6 months later, and still the shtar was written with the earlier loan, and we're concerned now to give back the shtar to the malva. He might collect from the lekuchais shaloi kedin. So again, the point, huh? No, why ruchni? It's gashmis.
People lose things.
No. It's not. It's not. The Gemara says that this is not the case. If you have important documents, you lock him up. You have a document that someone owes you $1,000. You don't walk around with it in your pocket, and then when something flies out in the street. Person has an important document. You put it in a safe place. You don't just carry it around with you. So the fact that he lost it is a siman that there's something off over here, and therefore we're chayshish that this shtar is possible. It was written with the wrong date. That's an akudah here. Okay, this is all Rav Asi's pshat in the Mishnah. Now the Gemara brings that there's another opinion about this. Okay, first, the Gemara doesn't start off right away with the pshat in our Mishnah, but the Gemara first goes back to the point that it's mentioned before, to the fact that you can write a shtar even if the malva is not with you, and even if you didn't borrow the money yet. So Abaye said about that, you don't have to make the distinction of Ravasi. What did Ravasi say? Ravasi said the fact that you write a shtar, even though the malva is not with you, that's in a case where you write clearly in the shtar that the loiva is obligating himself on this date, even if you didn't borrow the money yet. Abaye says differently. Abaye says, Edav b'chasumov zachan loy. Edim, as soon as you sign the document, just with the signature itself, so automatically, whether you write a hakna, whether you write specifically in the shtar that you're obligating yourself to pay from now, whether not, as soon as the Edom sign the shtar, right away there's a shibud, even if you didn't borrow the money until 6 months later, right away there's going to be a shibud on the shtar. And so therefore you can collect from the lekuchais from that date. Just the very signature itself creates that shibud right away. It's atakanas chachamim. In order that Edom should be able to sign the shtar. So even if you don't see any money that was borrowed right now, you can right away from then sign the shtar, and the shibud starts from that point. Even if it's a shtar that it wasn't written inside of it, that you're obligating yourself right now. Why is Abaye saying this? Mishum de kashile. It's interesting. Some Rishonim say that this next line or line and a half here in the Gemara is not part of the Gemara. It's an addition from the Goinim, Rav Yehudai Goin. They bring it over here on the side. Mishum de kashile, because Abaye had the question. Kiv in the Amrit. If you're going to say, if you said that b'shtori de lav akna, if there's a shtar where it's not written in it clearly that you're obligating yourself from this time. Kiles malva ba'dei, if the malva is not there with you, like kasvinon, we don't write such a kind of a shtar b'chlal. We're not going to sign the shtar if the malva is not there. So then lekele mechash the ikri v'kosov. The svara that Ravasi said before, that the pshat in our Mishnah is that a star that fell out of a person's pocket, we're concerned that something unusual happened with it. We're concerned that maybe it did happen, that it was written and it was signed, even though there was no akna. That Abaye disagrees with. He disagrees with that kind of pshat in the Mishnah. So therefore it says you can't start making a distinction between a star that is with akna, without akna, and then it's possible that it happened, that it was written and it was signed, even though there was no akna. He disagrees with that. Now the question though becomes what's Abaye's pshat in our Mishnah? So if a star fell, if he's not concerned about this, that it was written with a wrong date or with a star as a star muktim, so then what is the reason why in our Mishnah you don't return the star? The Gemara is going to get back to that soon. But in between, the Gemara first asks a question on Abaye's new concept that every star, as soon as it's signed, the signature itself, Chachamim instituted that right away, that's the date you can collect from. So that the Gemara asks from another place, but what's with a Mishnah that we have here later in this Pedic? It says, Motza gite noshim. Person finds a get, a divorce, a shichrei avodim, or a document of a release of an eved, or daitiki. Daitiki is a will, document of a will, matana, or a document of a gift, or v'shavrim, or receipts. All of these different documents that are signed by witnesses, harei ze lo yachzer. You should not return them to the person that claims it's his. Shema ksuvimayu, because possibly it was written and it was signed, but v'nimlach aleim shlei litnam. But then you change your mind and you decided that you're not going to use it and you're not going to give it. That's what the Mishnah there says. But according to Abaye, why are we concerned about this? Even if you change your mind and you don't use and you don't give this star, why does this matter? Didn't you just say, Abaye just said that there's a takonis chachamim, edav b'chasumov zachin loy. When Adam sign a document, the signature itself, so whatever is written in that document takes effect immediately. So l'chayre, that should mean whether you give it, whether you don't give it. So the Gemara answer is no. Even according to Abaye, that's only if you ended up giving the shtar to this person that you wrote it for him. So then we say, once you give it to him, the shibud, or whatever is written in the shtar, goes according to the date when the shtar was written, even if you gave it to him on a later date. But in a case where it was never came to his hands, you never gave it to him, then we don't say this concept of Edav v'chasum and Zachan loy. Okay, so that explains that Mishnah. But not,
how do you know he had to give it?
So exactly, we don't, and that's why that Mishnah there says that in such a case, when you find all these documents, you can't return it. But now the Gemara comes back to our Mishnah, according to Abaye's pshat. But not coming back to our Mishnah. What does it say in our Mishnah? When you speak about a document of a loan, so the Mishnah said, if there's written in the loan that you can collect even from the properties, even after they're sold off, lo yachzer. You shouldn't return it. In the beginning of the Gemara, we explained that what's the case over here, that the loive is standing there and he admits that he still owes this money. And we explained before that the pshat of our Mishnah is you can't return this because we're concerned that maybe the date in the shtar is wrong. The date could be written 6 months before he actually borrowed the money. That's what we're concerned about. Says the Gemara, this pshat doesn't fit according to Abaye. According to Ravasi, the pshat in this is, as we already explained before, the Oma Bishtari Aknaise. Rav Ashi says that when you write in a shtar that there's a kinyan, that you mishabed yourself right away, so then you could collect right away from that date. So then I could say, as we already explained before, according to Rav Ashi, Maikila, how does he explain our Mishnah? Bishtari de lav aknaisa. He explains the Mishnah speaking about a case where there's a shtar that does not have this special kinyan that the shibud should be chal right away. As we explained already before, that since you lost the shtar, we're concerned that nevertheless the date of the shtar is off and that it was written, even though usually if you don't write a shtar aknaisa, Edom do not sign such a shtar unless the malva is there and he borrows the money. But maybe here it did happen that it was signed before he actually borrowed the money. That was the concern there if the shtar fell, as we explained already before. But Abaye, however, according to Abaye, Abaye says there's no difference whether you write a special kinyan in the shtar that the shibud should be chal right away or not. That doesn't make a difference. As soon as the Edom signed the document, that's the Yizayche right away in the shibud of this document. So what are we going to explain? What's the concern in our Mishnah when you lose a shtar chayv? Why shouldn't you return it to the lender? Abaye says there's a new pshat in our Mishnah. Masnisin, haine taime. In our Mishnah, the reason why we don't return the shtar to the lender, the chayish or the chayshinon, lepirain or leknunya. What we're concerned is that the shtar was taka paid up already. Even though the loive is admitting that it was not paid up, why is the loive admitting to that? Because he's now conspiring together with the lender for knunya. There's a trick here. What's the trick? They're going to come and collect now from the lukuchais a second time. They're going to come to the lekeach and say, you bought the property that was really already mishubah to this loan from before, and they're collecting this loan a second time, and now the loiv and the malva together, they're going to split it between themselves. So the Lev is only admitting to this. The reason why the Malva lost the shtar, this is again going back to the point the Gemara said before. Why did the Malva lose the shtar? Because it was a paid up document. So therefore he wasn't an important document. So he lost it. And now that it's found, so the Lev and the Malva think to themselves, oh, let's take advantage of this and take the shtar again, and we're going to collect from the lekeach a second time, and we'll split it amongst ourselves. That's what we're concerned about. So therefore we can't return it. But that's only if you can collect from a lekeach. If it's a shtar though, that there's no achrayis nechasim in it, and you can't collect from the lekeach, so then there's no concern about such foul play. That's Abaye's pshat. Okay, but now the Gemara is going to come to a third pshat in the Mishnah. According to Shmuel's opinion, Shmuel says, Shmuel later we'll see in the Perek here says, we're not concerned about such a thing. We're not concerned that it was paid already and that there's a knunya, that they're conspiring together to go and collect a second time. So according to Shmuel, how do we learn pshat in our Mishnah? If Shmuel agrees to what Ravasi said, Ravasi says that usually a date in the shtar, you only go by the date if there's a special kinyan in it. So then, so our Mishnah is a shtar that fell and it was found now where it doesn't have that special kinyan in it, as we already explained before, and we're concerned that the money wasn't borrowed yet until a later time, so therefore the date in the shtar is off. But the Shmuel holds like Abaye's opinion. And Abaye says that just the signatures in the shtar, there's a takanas achavim that right away the shibud begins from then, regardless if you write a special kinyan in it or not. And Shmuel is not concerned that maybe it was paid already and now they're just making a kanunya. How do they translate kanunya there? Do they have some kind of a trick, or they're conspiring together?
Collusion.
Huh? Collusion. Yeah, that they're colluding together to go and collect from the lekuches a second time. So how do we explain this according to Shmuel? Why shouldn't we return the shtar? So here the Gemara brings a third pshat. Shmuel maikim masnisin. If Shmuel agrees to Abaye, then Shmuel would explain our Mishnah kishe'en chayiv maida. When the shtar was found and the loive is standing there and saying, "Don't return the shtar to the malva because I paid it already, or because the shtar is mezuyev, it's a forgery. I never borrowed this money." That's the case here. So the Gemara right away asks, so then what's the pshat of here? Why are we making a distinction whether the shtar has in it achrayis nechasim or not? If the loiv is saying that I never borrowed the money, so then the shtar, even if it doesn't allow you to collect from a lekeach, why should you give it back? True, you can't collect from mishubadim, from a lekeach that brought properties from this, but you can still use this shtar to collect from the properties that are in the possession of the loive. And the loive is saying, no, don't return it, I never borrowed the money. And we have a very strong reason to believe the loive when he says, I never borrowed the money. Why? Because again, the point there is, if this shtar was lost, there's a problem with this document. So if the loive is saying it's a forgery, we have reason to believe him. So why do you return the shtar? And that says the Gemara, Shmuel l'taimei. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. And what did he say about a shtar that does not have a achrayis nechasim in it? Shmuel said, Rav Meir would say, shtar choiv, she'em by achrayis nechasim, a shtar choiv, shtar for a loan that does not have written in it that you can collect from it, also from the properties that are sold off. Ein goive, this is a shtar that can't be used at all. You can't collect with the shtar. It's not a kosher shtar b'chlal. You can't collect from it, not mishabadim, not b'nei chayrin. The whole point of having a shtar is that it gives you the right to collect from the karkois, from the properties of the loive. But a shtar that has no achrayis nechasim is not a kosher shtar b'chlal, so you can't collect with it at all. So therefore, there's no concern if you return it to the malva that it'll give him the ability to now use the shtar to collect with it. A shtar with no achrayis nechasim cannot be used at all. So the Gemara asks right away, So if you can't collect with the star at all, so why is it saying that you return it to the malva? What are you returning it to him for? You can't use it anyways. So the Gemara says, you give it back to the malva. You can use the star. It is a piece of paper, or maybe it's parchment. You can use it to cover a flask. So the Gemara says, since there's an argument here between the malva and the loiva says that this whole star is a forgery, so why are you giving it back to the malva? Maybe you give it back to the loiva. So the Gemara answers, no, there's no reason to give it to the loiva. Why? Because the loiva is standing and screaming that this whole star is a forgery, that it never happened. I never borrowed this money. So how are you giving it back to the loiva? The loiva is saying clearly that the star is not mine. This whole loan never happened. This whole thing is just a forgery. So the piece of paper, who forged this piece of paper? Who forged this? The malva. So the loiva is admitting that the malva is the one that made this forgery. So at least the piece of paper has to be given back to the malva to use to cover a flask. Okay, so we have over here 3 pshatim in the Mishnah according to Rav Meir. We had Rav Asi's pshat, Abayi's pshat, and Shmuel's pshat. Now the Gemara is going to continue and explain according to this what's the machlekes in the Mishnah, because this was all the explanation of Rav Meir, but then you have the Chachamim. The Chachamim in the Mishnah said, Benkach or Benkach, when you find the star, it doesn't matter if it hasn't it written Achrais Nechasim or not. Either way, you don't give it back because you can still use it to collect. So based on the two of the pshatim that we had before, the Gemara is going to bring over here 2 different ways how to understand this machlekes. Amar Rabbi Lazar, so Rabbi Lazar says, machlekes b'she'ein chayiv maida. Following the last pshat that we just said here, according to Shmuel, the machlekes between Rav Meir and the Chachamim is, like we just said, that the loiva is not admitting that he borrowed this money. The Rav Meir is savar. So why does Rav Meir make a distinction between a star that has a chrais nechasim in it or not? Rav Meir's opinion is star she'ein by a chrais nechasim, a star where it's not written in it that you can collect from the properties that are sold off. Ein a goyve loyme mishabi v'loyme b'nechari. You can't collect with it at all, as the Gemara just explained. So therefore, there's no reason why you shouldn't return it to the malva. Let him use it as a cover for his flask. However, the Rabbanan's opinion is migve gavi, that even a star that there's no achrais nechasim in it, you can still use it to collect. You could use it to collect from the properties of the loiva himself, even if you can't use it to collect from Mishubadim, you can still collect with it. So therefore, you can't return any star. You can't return not a star that has it in achrais nechasim or doesn't. The loiva is not maida, and the star fell. There's something wrong with the star, so we don't return it. Aval, so says Rabbi Lazar now, according to this pshato, kishachayiv maida, if the loiva himself is standing there and he admits that he owes the money, divrei hakol yachzer. Everybody would agree that you have to return the star. We're not concerned that maybe the star was paid up already once before, and now there's a collusion between the loiva and the malva to collect the second time. So again, this, like I said before, this is following Shmuel's opinion that says that there's no such a concern of any foul play here between the loiva and the malva. That's one shot. Rabbi Yechanan says the pshat is different, and this is based on the other 2 pshatim we said before, according to Rav Asi and Abaye, that what's the case of our Mishnah? Kishachayiv maida, when the loiva is here and he's admitting that he owes the money. So what's the machlekes between the Rav Meir and the Chachamim? The Rav Meir savar, Rav Meir's opinion is shtar she'ein by achrais nechasim, the star that doesn't have in it written the achrais nechasim mishabdi hu delay gavi. You can't collect from mishubadim avum ibn chayre migbe gabi, but from bnei chayren you could collect from it. So since you could collect from bnei chayren, so therefore Rab Meir says that this kind of star you could return, because the only concern that we have over here is that there could be a kenunya, that maybe was paid up already and there's a kenunya over here. That concern that there's a collusion between the loiv and the malva is only if you're giving back a star that you could collect from a likeach. It has nachrais nechasim. But if you can't, you could just collect from bnei chayrin, so then you can give it back. It's not a problem. But Rabbanan Savri, however, Rabbanan's opinion is Mimishabdi Nami Gavi. Rabbanan holds, and here's a new point that the Gemara didn't explain before. Rabbanan holds that a star that's not written in an Achrayis Nechasim, that star is totally kosher. Not only is it totally kosher, you could actually collect from it from Mishubadim, even if it's not written in the star. Before we said, Shmuel says that Rab Meir would say that a shtar that wasn't written in a Achrais Nechasim, the whole shtar is possible. You can't use it b'chlal. Over here now, according to this pshat, which is not according to Shmuel, but according to this pshat, the Rabbanan hold that a shtar that's not written in it in Achrais Nechasim, the Gemara will later explain that this is what's called, it's a Toas Sefer. It's an omission. The Sefer didn't explicitly write it into the shtar that you could collect from these properties even after they're sold off. But it's an automatic understood thing that that's what the shtar is for. And therefore, Rabbanan always hold that you can collect from Mishubadim as well. So therefore, any shtar that you find, you can't return even if the loiva is admitting, because we're concerned that maybe the loiva and the malva are going to use this shtar to collect a second time. But now, according to this pshat, if the case over here is that the loive is not admitting divrei akoyel lo yachzer, we don't return the shtar, the chayshina and lepiran, because we're afraid that the shtar was paid up already once. If the loive is not meida, that's the two pshatim here in the machlokes of Rab Meir and the Rabbanan. Okay, we'll stop over here. The hemshech of the Gemara goes all the way down over here. The next Amud, we'll learn with Shem tomorrow.